Welcome to a new episode of the Fueled Podcast with Chris Cyr.
Welcome back to the Fueled Podcast with Chris Cyr. I'm sitting here today with Grant Smith. Grant got a college degree in marketing and has spent pretty much his adult life in the automotive industry with the last 20 years at turbokits.com. I'm excited to get to kind of understand his story of how he's been in the automotive industry for so long. And really the goal for me of this conversation today is how he found success and really what motivates him to keep moving forward. So Grant, thank you so much for coming out today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better over the last couple of years, and appreciate the product, support that we've been able to give you. So.
No, and I really looking forward to get into how we met story, but I think that's going to make more sense at the end of our conversation than right now.
For sure.
So is that all right for the goal though, is finding your motivations and trying to teach the people what, how you found some success?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in this game for a very long time. Right. Going back to the high school days, I always was flipping through Sport Compact Car and Performance Auto and Sound magazine, and just really trying to think of ways that I could, get into that industry and get a little piece of that pie.
Right.
And it really kind of started out import drag racing.
Okay.
Just kind of at a local level.
Okay.
I lived in Connecticut at the time.
All right.
The Berlin Turnpike is a very famous road down there, and there's some street racing that happens.
A little bit of
possibly happens on Friday and Saturday nights. We used to call it Mexico. Going to Mexico.
Yep.
And that was always a highlight of our summers. They had huge car shows down there. They had mini trucks when mini trucks were really big.
Yep.
They had a bunch of those shows down there. And the people that I was around and the time that I was spending on my off times from work were always around the car.
Nice.
I pretty much worked. All of my paychecks went to parts for my car.
Cool.
My parents were not mechanically inclined, but they supported my efforts and interest in getting into that industry.
Nice.
And it really was that was kind of the turning point, which drove me to meet my partner Jesse now.
Okay.
We ended up using the same kind of chassis builder, engine builder. Jesse was preparing to compete for the One Lap of America at the time.
Right.
And I was kind of doing some drag race stuff, and we were both in the Honda scene, which was really huge back then.
Nice.
And so that's really kind of how Jesse and I met. And we started this venture, turbokits.com and turbochargers.com, and it's been going well ever since.
That was a great overview, I think, of where we're going to touch. So
yeah.
Thank you for that. That's perfect.
Good.
So
Yeah.
let's rewind to the beginning a little bit more. So you were in Connecticut, raised in Connecticut?
Yeah, I was born in Madison, Connecticut, which is on the coast, the Long Island Sound coast down there in southern Connecticut. And then I've honestly moved north every move I've made, so
a little bit closer
to Team O'Neill, right?
Yeah.
So but yeah, so Madison, Connecticut, and then Middlefield, Connecticut, which is central part of the state, and then Canton, Connecticut.
Okay.
And then met my wife in college, and we moved to southern New Hampshire, bought a house southern New Hampshire, and now we live in kind of central New Hampshire near Lake Sunapee, and it's a great place to raise kids, which is now my focus is sharing my time between work and family life, and finding that balance is huge for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a great road. The internet has allowed me to work remotely for most of my time.
Yeah.
And that's been a blessing,
Right.
for sure. We're a .com business, so we rely certainly on the internet and also the flexibility it gives to have a work-life balance. So
cool. So what was your first actual paying job? What was the first thing you made money doing?
Yeah, so after college, I got into the Toyota sales line of work. I was a sales manager at a Toyota dealership in southern Connecticut. And it's a great industry. The automotive industry, the sales industry is a great opportunity. it's a little challenging though because of the hours that you have to commit to it. So that was kind of you never get 2 days in a row off either. I think I had Thursdays and Sundays off or something. Okay. So it was very challenging to get into the hobbies a little further and spend more time with my girlfriend at the time. And you just work a lot of hours and it's full commitment. So it's really a great industry if you are willing to put the time in, but I just really wasn't at that point. So
how long were you there?
I was there about 1.5 years, or so, maybe 2 years. And then I was a power equipment manager after that at a True Value store. And, that wasn't really where I wanted to be either. Sure. And it just kind of happened that I was getting more into the auto racing stuff, the car racing stuff, the snowmobile racing stuff at the same time. And I was, again, able to connect with a shop in Connecticut that was using, their Honda expertise for building, drag cars and stuff locally. Okay. And it just so happened that my now the president of our company, Jesse, was using the same engine builder, like I mentioned, and Mike, who was the one building my car, said, "Hey, there's this guy Jesse, and he bought this domain name. He's working out of the basement of his house, and he's gotten so busy that he needs some help, and we started literally at the ground level, no pun intended, in his basement. Yeah. We turbokits.com was our first venture in the domain name. And we were literally shipping turbo kits out of his basement. FedEx and UPS were showing up every day, dropping stuff off and picking stuff up. And, we started shipping things all over the world as soon as the internet was that far reaching where we could ship to, all other countries. And so that was our first kind of venture in the turbo business, and we really focused on turbo kits at that point, which, it's certainly the industry's changed. There's so many factory turbocharged vehicles now where kits aren't necessarily our focus quite so much anymore. But that was really our bread and butter at that point. And then, soon after that, we outgrew the basement. So we needed a office space where we could, at least look professional. Right. We weren't sitting in this basement anymore. We were at a desk, and we had a small warehouse space in Avon, Connecticut. It was kind of over a Tweeter store. Tweeter was an electronics company back then, and a lot of mobile electronic stuff. So it was a neat spot to be. We had a lot of kind of cross marketing with them. They had a lot of their audio customers were interested in performance too, so it worked out really well.
That's awesome. Were they doing installs and stuff?
Yeah, they were doing a lot of mobile installs, but guys wanted a fancy exhaust tip or something to go with their Honda Civic back then. So
is that whistling tips?
Yeah, that was the start of all that too. So soon after that, we were probably in that space for about 2 years, and then an opportunity came up down the road where it was like a large 3-bay shop became available. So at that point, we decided we were going to do some customer work, some customer install work. So we bought a dyno for tuning, an R&D purpose, which took up one of the whole bays. The other whole bay was, warehouse and fabrication, and then the other bay was our office. And that was a great kind of stepping stone. That's where we learned, kind of refined more of what our vision was. And that's where we started taking over the R&D and production of the turbo kits. We were no longer just a reseller at that point. we started kind of taking on our own product line, and we bought out a turbo manufacturer at that point, which was a huge opportunity for us. We took his line of product, which was the Toyota line of products, like the MR2, Celica, Corolla turbo kits, the 1ZZ, 2ZZ platform. We started, building those turbo systems in-house with his guidance. And that was probably the point where we realized, like, look, if we're going to really make any money at this, like, we've got to start developing our own product. Because the margins
on resell.
Yeah, the margins on reselling stuff is not great, especially in our industry.
Sure.
And at the time, there was no price protection, right? So, and at this point, we had a lot of overhead. We had a shop, we had a dyno we had to pay for, we had employees that were doing installs. So we couldn't compete with the guys in their basement anymore that were selling turbo kits, drop shipping turbo kits. So we decided, in order to not have any more competition, developing our own and marketing our own and building our own products was really the only way to go at that point.
Amazing.
And that was a big realization for us. At that time, we also realized that, maybe installing kits on customer cars and working on customer vehicles is really not for us.
You're strong, right?
There's, and you're constantly trying to find your niche in the business world. Where do you belong? Where's your direction? And I think at that point, having the responsibility of, getting the work done on time, and setting expectations properly for customers when we were working on their daily driver car. We're doing stuff, and if heaven forbid something goes wrong, they can't get to work the next day. And when you're working in the performance industry, a lot can go wrong. Sure. There's product delays, there's tuning issues that we run into. So having that responsibility was not really anything I think that we wanted to continue with.
Right.
So we kept the dyno. We used that as a tool, a tuning tool, and an R&D and development tool.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, kind of shift in our direction.
Yeah.
And we had gotten to the point where we were big enough. We were direct with all of these turbo manufacturers, but yet we were still small enough where we could make a shift. We could make a pivot.
Right.
We weren't so weighted in one direction.
Right.
Where
millions of dollars just lost if
down the drain. Right. So that was kind of our period there. And then we soon outgrew that facility too. We needed more warehouse distribution space because we were focused on the R&D and development and production side of our business now.
Nice.
And so we actually moved to Windsor Locks, Connecticut, right by Bradley Airport.
Okay.
And we got to a much larger facility there. We shared a space with ECS Performance, they used to be East Coast Swappers.
Yep.
They were huge in the Subaru market. We got into building and working with them and partnering with them on a lot of projects.
Cool.
Robert Champion, we had a lot to do with the build of his rally car.
Very cool.
So that was, kind of even further, sent us in the direction of the R&D and production of our own products.
Yeah.
We had and still have probably some of the best talented fabricators in the industry.
That's awesome.
And it's been years to build relationships with them and understand their needs.
Sure.
So that's been a great opportunity for us too, that location. And we further, after we outgrew that spot, we have our own kind of facility now in Windsor Locks. I'm sorry, not Windsor Locks, Harwinton, Connecticut,
Okay.
Which is solely ours and used extensively for R&D and warehouse and distribution out of there. So
cool.
That's kind of how we've grown. We're still at that location for now.
Okay.
We'll see what the next chapter brings. We've kind of morphed much more into the turbocharger rebuild, repair, and upgrade market. So, I have a turbo balancer in my garage at home.
Amazing.
So we're constantly, trying to develop technology for turbochargers in the turbocharger industry and wheel design and aero and new materials. And there's just so much opportunity in that market.
Right.
So, where we've come from drop shipping products from other manufacturers, we're now designing and developing our own stuff. And
Amazing.
it takes a lot of, effort to figure out where you belong and what direction is best for you.
Right.
So,
let's, if we've got some younger listeners in their teens or 20s, let's
Sure.
take us back to Grant before kind of the turbo kit days. So you were at Scion after college.
I was,
And
yes.
tell me some of the lessons that you learned as your first kind of real paid job. What are some of the things you still do today that you learned at that job?
Sure. So even before Scion, when I was in college, I actually worked with a company out of California, marketing company, and if you remember the Honda Element,
Yeah.
which was kind of an SUV, a multi-purpose SUV, and we came up with some marketing campaigns.
Really?
That focused, a kayak, right? So one of the ads on TV was, some young people using the Element to go kayaking. And another one was mountain biking, and another advertising campaign was young people mountain biking with the Element. That did not fly at all. It was, old people bought the car.
Really?
Yeah, and we realized soon after that old people want the same thing. They want a car that's, they can clean out easily. The Element had a floor that you could kind of wash out and keep clean. They wanted space, where they could carry their stuff around. And
Kind of like a van without the sliding door.
kind of
right?
a van without the sliding door, and they wanted it for small adventures and stuff too. But we realized that they had the money to buy it. That was the thing, is the people that we were marketing towards didn't really have the funds to buy the car.
Interesting.
So, talking about learning experiences from careers, you're going to have failures. There are failures. You have to, kind of understand that maybe you missed the boat on some of that effort, and really kind of take that as a learning experience. And where can you go next? Okay, so we screwed up the audience, for the Honda Element. Let's do better with the Scion market, right? So
take me back. So I know as a 20-something, when that happens, it's hard to deal with, right? You've gotten to live a long time beyond that, but
Sure.
can you remember what that felt like? How did you work through that kind of big, obvious failure? But, how did you manage and deal with that?
Well, like you said, failure in your 20s is a hard thing, because you're trying to prove yourself.
Right.
You're trying to prove to your future employer, or you're trying to prove to your parents that all of their education and college and everything is worth it. So there is some struggle with that, and there's a lot of self kind of realization that maybe this isn't exactly where I want to be. So while marketing was a lot of my focus in college,
Okay.
Maybe I wasn't cut out for that. But that doesn't mean that I can't work for the largest advertising campaign in the country. Maybe I market at a smaller level, or maybe I market with a local or an online or a .com. Writing has always been my strong point.
Okay.
I've been able to put a pen to paper, and I ended up writing for Performance Auto and Sound magazine.
Okay.
Through the auto industry, it got me, and that was always kind of my interest, is kind of the writing, marketing element, and it all really worked, because I was so focused in the automotive industry that there was a lot of, at that time, there's a huge space for that.
Okay.
And a huge opportunity there. So I was crushed that I didn't get to work for Honda.
Right.
But I was able to shift gears and realize that there was another opportunity and something I really loved.
Right.
Maybe I didn't need to shoot for the stars, but maybe I could, shoot just below for the horizon, and find something that was attainable and still get me in the door, and something that I really, really love to do. And the biggest thing too is finding your passion. You know, I mean, the automotive industry we do this because it's our passion.
Right.
It's not the greatest for our retirement program or anything. It's your financial advisor's never going to tell you to get into race cars, right? But it's a passionate industry. It's a the competition and the friendships and the relationships that you build through the auto industry. There's nothing else like it. So that's a huge perspective, and you have to always be positive. Staying positive and staying motivated, while it can be difficult, if you miss the mark, finding an alternative at a place that makes, is comfortable, I think is your second best option.
So what made you realize you were good at writing? Like, where did that come from? Was that early age, or kind of when did you find a passion or that you were actually good at writing?
Yeah, that started early on. Really like elementary school. High school, elementary school. I was always comfortable with it. I could always. My mom actually was a book editor for the Yale University Press in Connecticut, and.
Wow.
She was, constantly saying, all right, well, you said it this way. Maybe just try to add a little pizzazz to it,
She's a walking thesaurus.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Try to end it with a question mark instead of a period, or, just try to make it interesting for the reader. And I've always kind of taken that advice and used that, and through my elementary school, I was in a program called TAG, which was Talented and Gifted. And it was always for my writing. And then I ended up giving like speeches and things too, which was kind of odd, in middle school. It was a lot of pressure for somebody my age. Memorizing speeches and giving speeches in front of a large audience was a tough thing to do. But again, I overcame that challenge and really thought that was kind of my niche. And as far as a marketing or business side of it, I could use my writing to get our message out, which was important, especially at that time, when SEO or search engine optimization was huge. It's still very important now. But the content that was on the page and all the links that we could put in the page, and the blogs or the chats that we could do to populate our page.
Every way that someone can search in Google how to find you. And
hot topics, right? Hot topics, hot word. What are the hot buttons that Google's gonna like? That's always been a struggle, and it's still a struggle. But yeah. So as far as my writing goes, that's always been probably my strong point. And I've been able to take that into an industry that, well, you're a good writer. How are you going to fit into the auto industry? Well, I've kind of made it work. Other than writing for, Motor Trend or somebody like that, I can kind of take it in my marketing experience to build our place with our turbocharger industry. So
take me through the decision to go from Scion to the power company, like out of automotive industry, or why did you make that decision?
Yeah, it was a diversion. What actually happened was the owner of the power equipment company bought a car from me. And he said, look, your customer service is awesome. Like, I've never had this experience before buying a car. Cool. Do you want a job? That's how it came. And I was, he said, look, we're trying to grow our power equipment business. We're selling commercial mowers and servicing commercial, landscapers in the commercial market. And we really think you'd be a good fit. And so I did that. I did that for a couple of years. Realized that while I enjoyed, the personal relationships that I had with the landscapers and our professional customers, that it still wasn't the industry that I wanted to be in. Okay. I didn't get excited about mower blades. Sure. I didn't get excited about how much horsepower this particular lawnmower had. It wasn't a passion of mine. Sure. And I think in order for me to be successful, or most anybody to be successful, there's got to be some passion there, some underlying drive that really wants to make you stand out or be successful in your industry.
I think it's extremely important in sales, though, especially, right? Because
extremely important in
sales. If you're
sales.
not passionate and you're in sales, that's probably when you're the shitty salesman that like is pushing everyone to buy something that you don't even care about, right?
And Chris, it's funny because I was thinking about an example of where and that's the thing. My personality is such that I value long-term relationships. I've realized that about myself. So people, my customers, really kind of have a trust in me, I think, because I value them as a customer, as a human, as a person, as a relationship. So I was thinking of an experience when I was in the automotive industry, in the sales industry, the car sales industry, where I was showing this used car to this young family, and I said, look, they were really excited about the car, which was great. But I said, look, the car's been in an accident, and I told them straight up, I was like, look, you can see this panel, the paint doesn't match the rest of the car. I said, like, while I appreciate that you're really interested in this car, I'd like to sell you one that hasn't been in an accident. And that kind of is my realization that, look, I can build trust with these customers. And at that point, they were all in as customers of mine. They said, look, this guy is looking out for our best interest. Right. He, as far as an experience, a sales experience, he wants us to have the best experience that we can have. And that was completely true. Right. And that holds true for our business now. I really want our customers to be happy with our products and to have a great experience.
That sometimes means you're not going to get the bigger sale, right? And like realizing that.
And you shoot yourself in the foot many times,
right?
But with the understanding that, they're going to need a new intercooler in the future. While they're buying couplers and clamps and spending $30 now, there'll be a point where they're going to spend $3,000, and I want them to come back to me because they appreciate that relationship.
Yeah.
So
no, it's important to find that when you're young, especially if you're in marketing and sales, right? Is like that breakover point where you got to be passionate about the thing if you want to be really good at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It helps a lot. And it's something that, I think you could be less passionate and be a, accountant probably, because numbers are numbers, right?
Absolutely.
But
yes.
especially marketing and sales, it makes a big difference.
Right.
Okay. And so what happened after the power company, the power equipment company?
Yeah. So after the power equipment, portion of my life, I came to the realization that, look, I need to get back into the automotive performance stuff. This is where my heart is. Okay. Going back to reading those magazines in high school and just, how do I get to this level? That's where, I got more into the racing stuff. Was while I was working there, I had some income that I could spend on a
step
car
up in income from Scion to
it was
go there.
Yeah, it was consistency,
and better work hours, maybe.
Better work hours, consistent income, which was good. And then I got to the point where I was I started doing more drag race stuff, and at the time, and I don't tell many people this,
just the internet world right
now. I was big into naturally aspirated engine builds. Yeah, in the turbo industry,
I mean, everyone has got a dark era.
Yeah, right. Well, I learned, right? So, yeah. So
bigger engines.
Yeah. So I was huge into naturally aspirated. So I had a Honda Civic at the time, and I couldn't do much with the single cam stock D16 motor that it came with. So I did a B18B swap. And ultimately ended up being a B18 C5 setup for the dual red cam VTEC 1.8 stuff. I ended up
this work in your garage yourself, like
a lot of it I was. Okay. I had to figure it out. My parents didn't know a lot about it, and I didn't have the huge financial backing to pay somebody to do it. So I had to figure it out on my own. Okay. So I did a lot of research. I ended up finding two companies out of California that could do some engine building for me. So, cool. Took the motor out of the car, sent it out to California, said, look, I want to build the fastest naturally aspirated car in the country right now. And that was my goal. I never got there.
Sure. Gotta have a dream though.
But you gotta dream. You know, and while I ended up making, you know, 250, 260 wheel horsepower out of a B18B, B18C at the time, you know, that was a milestone at that point.
Yeah.
You know, now
what was your daily driver at the time?
Well, it was that car, you know, like that was the car. So I bought a little Nissan pickup, you know, a little hard body, and slammed that to the ground. You know, put in the Honda Del Sol seats and made a mini truck, and you know, and I had more fun with that thing. You know, that was a beater. I'd slide into snow banks. I'd, you know, just you know, do 360s all over the place and every parking lot I could find, and you know, donuts everywhere and burnouts on speed bumps and all that stuff. But so when the car wasn't on the road, I had that little hard body truck, and so just getting from point A to point B, that was my goal. So
and the girlfriend was okay with it at the time?
Yeah, you know, she didn't really know much about the car, you know, because the car was away for so long. You know, you do these engine builds and all this stuff, and you know, it was such a long process that that she
could kind of sneak it through.
Yeah, I don't think she realized that my passion was so strong for the car, you know, and then you know, as soon as the motor came back, and I started racing again, you know, she was not super happy about that. You know, why are we spending all this time and money on this car?
How did you balance your finances in your 20s? So you're finally making some more money, but like, what else do you have going on in your life? Are you paying your own rent? Are you with your family? Like,
So you know, my girlfriend at the time, she was at UConn, Avery Point, which is kind of a satellite campus for UConn. She was doing marine studies down there. So so we had an apartment together. You know, I didn't, you know, her work at the school, she ended up working at the admissions department at the school, so they ended up kind of covering the rent. So I had a little bit of flexibility, but you know, I wasn't balancing my finances. You know, everything was going to the car or to you know, the mini truck or whatever at the time. But that was what was fun. You know, that's what my passion was, and that's how I got to meet people and build relationships and you know, go to the Pike on Friday nights, and you know, that was what was fun at the time. I was all in.
And you were passionate about trying to build the fastest Honda at that time, naturally aspirated. Just kind of focused on that.
Yeah, just very focused on that, and you know, wanted to try to beat the turbo cars. And realizing that it didn't take as much power on a naturally aspirated car. It's more usable power than, you know, a peak number on a turbo. But turbos have come a long way since then. And you know, the cars that you know, it was a lot to make, you know, for a turbo Civic to make 400 or 500 horsepower then. That was a tremendous amount of power. You know, now 1,000 is the new 500, right? I mean, everybody's making 1,000.
Wild.
Yeah. And who would have thought? You know, who would have thought we would get to this point?
And it's fairly like actually cheap in comparison, right? Like the amount of money you were paying to get that much power.
Yeah, we were kind of, you know, pioneers at the time. You know, there's Miles Batista from Revhard was kind of one of the early kit builders for the Honda market. You know, we became dealers of his for years. We still are. We still work with Miles. And you know, he was kind of like one of the early guys, and also James from F-Max. And we were a dealer for them too. And those guys were kind of the first ones to offer like a kit in a box, you know, hardware or the hardware and everything that you need to have horsepower in a box and have it show up at your door and bolt onto your vehicle.
Oh, wow.
So once it became mainstream, you know, getting turbo manifolds and downpipes and stuff, that wasn't easily had by, you know, the normal guy that didn't have fabrication abilities. So that kind of, you know, for young people, that became an opportunity where they could build a turbo car on the cheap, right? And they could do it in their driveway. They could do it in their garage. And, you know, we could help them. We could help them with the tuning. We could help them with the fuel system upgrades and the rest of the components they need to make the power. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but you were in kind of the start of all that. You were playing with cars. You were trying to be around cars. And then when did the shift for the turbo thing come?
Yeah, so the shift came naturally, just because of my relationship with Jesse, my engine builder, my chassis builder. Mike said, "Hey, there's a guy, Jesse. He's got this domain, turbokits.com. He's trying to sell stuff out of his basement." So at that point, I had become a turbo fan. If I was going to work in the turbo industry,
right?
I really needed to start liking turbos.
Right.
So I did, and just the way that they make power, the flexibility that they have, the capabilities that they have. I soon learned everything there was to learn about turbos, and really supported that, that avenue and that revenue change shift. So
do you remember the first meeting with Jesse? What was your guys'
I do, yeah, I do.
Take us the day one.
I do, it was I brought my Civic, I was like, I'm gonna impress this guy, he's got to really know that I'm into cars, and I know the industry, and so I got all dressed up, and I think he walked out of his basement in a sweatpants or something, and I was like, oh wow, what do we what am I getting into here? Is this guy really serious about this, this business? So, I kind of just handed him my resume, and he asked me a couple questions, and he said, okay, when can you start? it was in his driveway,
He's desperate, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, look, let's start next week, so that was it. I'd show up at his basement,
processing orders,
processing orders. Yeah, I mean, it was the phone was ringing. We back then we had a landline. It was our landline was started ringing. Right. And I was writing content for the website constantly. And Jesse and I have a really good balance. Our relationship is great because I'm kind of the more just the big picture guy. There's nothing we can't do, right? That's always been my mindset, and he's always been very grounded, the realist, the money guy, right? So, it's gonna take a lot of funding to get to that point, or, so I've been the big dreamer, nice. and I still am, and it's been great, our relationship wise, because we've able to find the balance. He's been able to reel me in, and I've been able to say, hey, let's just go for it. Right. Let's try it. And you can't be afraid of failure. Right. There's always something to be learned from a so-called failure. Right.
What's the biggest mistake you think you've made, or was there a big thing that you thought was going to work out really well and it didn't end up?
I think over the years, you kind of venture off onto new opportunities, and they don't always work out. Right. So I think as far as a business goes, maybe getting into the customer work, the customer installs.
Was there one job that broke the camel's back?
Yeah, we blew up a car, and I
Never
said,
good?
well, wait a minute, and of course, our mentality is that we're going to take care of this customer.
Sure.
This customer didn't come here expecting for his car to blow up. So, and it was a stupid mistake by our installer. He hooked the vacuum port up on the wrong port for a wastegate, and it spiked the boost, and there goes the motor. And I said, for the little bit of money that we could have made doing this work, now we're spending a lot of money to fix this customer's car and make it right for him. That I just don't know that this is really the way we want to go. Right. It was too much risk and not enough reward. Right.
That's the same thing I experienced when we were managing motorsport programs. Through Team O'Neill. So not only are we experts in driving and training, but we're also taking clients going racing, and it got so overwhelming we started paring down into one client left, and then that one client left got really hurt, and so it's now we have no income and all this infrastructure, and it's I think we're done with
Yeah.
this business model for right now, anyways. That was 2019, so
But it takes a lot of growing pains to realize that that's the right decision for your business.
right. Yeah, no doubt.
You know, and you know, there may be a time, you know, I'm not ever taking it off the table where we
Right.
won't work on customer cars again.
Right.
But it's got to be, it can't be their daily drivers, right? I mean,
There's a lot of lessons
There's-
learned if we're going to go back into this.
yes, we cannot have this type of responsibility. I mean, this guy's got to get to work tomorrow, you know? So how are we gonna make this right for him?
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a learning experience, and you know, definitely a heartache, because we had thought that, you know, some of our competition at the time was like, you know, like Joe Tech or Vinny 10 Racing, or, you know, a lot of these guys that were really good and experts in their field. But they didn't have a huge online presence like we did, you know. So we were a online focused business that was trying to work on customer cars, and it just wasn't, you know, it didn't fit our mission or our vision.
Yeah.
Which you know was a heartache at the time.
Right.
So we wanted it to work.
Did you and Jesse kind of agree together on that, or how did that like play out with a partnership? Because that's something else I want to get into with you, is like partnerships are notoriously really hard and like
Very
have
hard.
lots of stress and challenges, and it's a marriage, and
It is a
like,
marriage, yeah.
So when you make a tough decision like that, how do you guys balance that? And
Yeah, so that's really a tough thing. You know, and Jesse, you know, I love him like a brother. But at the
that means
time,
you fight like a brother.
we fought like brothers. Yeah, and you know, and he had, you know, he jokingly admits about it. You know, he was the first guy that went to an anger management program and stormed out of the anger management program, you know. So
Nice.
So at the time, you know, he had a temper, you know. He really was you know, he driven, you know, very driven, very motivated to make it right for this customer and for all of our customers. And you know, chairs got thrown and keyboards got smashed, and you know, I said, why are we doing this? You know, like we both kind of thought, why are we doing this to ourselves? You know, we're driving ourselves off a cliff just trying to make this one customer happy when we blew his motor. It's not a good direction for us. And yeah, that was a huge, you know, relationship test also, because, you know, we both, you know, wanted to go into the installs and we were both going to be in agreement at the end of the day. And I think that was a very, very good test for our relationship too.
So eventually it came around, obviously.
Yeah. We both were very much under the understanding that, look, this is not the direction we need to be in. So
That's good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that can be challenging sometimes to reflect on the worst parts, right? And like, you know, think about that.
But you got to keep that in the back of your mind, you know,
You do.
Because that's your growing time when you have these hurdles, and when you can overcome them. That's definitely, you know, as far as a business and a relationship goes, because Jesse and I have been, you know, married for 25, 26 years now.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. And, you know, because we both very much understand our strengths and our weaknesses, we very much stay out of each other's way.
That's smart.
You know,
Well-defined roles, really. help.
very defined roles. Yeah. Very defined roles. And it's been, you know, a great relationship because we complement each other that way. He's very much the back end person. That's why he's not here today.
More shop floor kind of guy.
Yeah. So
I like those real guys sometimes. but
Yeah. So he just wants to be left alone.
That's awesome.
You know, being on the phone is not his strength.
Right.
But he leaves that part to me,
Right.
and it works. And he's much more of our tech guy. You know, if you have a tech question and you just can't get from point A to point B, he is very methodical and experienced and more than willing to help somebody in that perspective, which I lose my frustration, you know, pretty quickly on
That's
something
not
like
your
that. So
focus.
right.
That's interesting.
Right.
So when did you start to see like personal growth and success from the company? Like, was there a point where did you finally build a race car you were hoping for, or did you finally buy a house or a boat, or like was there a goal that you were trying to achieve and like you found success in the business enough where like the financial freedom changed?
Yeah. So, you know, when our site started ranking really well, and things started really kind of going at their own, kind of on cruise control. We got to a point where the orders kind of just started coming in, and I think a turning point for us too with the business was we were able to have a very automated e-commerce website. It was far less time consuming for us to process an order. Customers used to have to call us with their credit card number, and we would manually process everything through the back end of our site because there was no option otherwise at that point.
Right.
And when we were able to have a more automated system and take different forms of payment, that freed up a lot of my time to focus on other things, within the company. We certainly became, we were Turbonetics' biggest dealer at a point. And I think once we hit that milestone and we were going out to the SEMA show and getting invited to the Lexus after party and the AEM after party and all these things that, we kind of have made it in this industry. We've kind of found a niche for ourselves.
Right.
I did. I got married in 2007. I bought my first house then. It's another motivator, right?
Right.
I mean, you kind of get to a milestone and you're saying, wow, this is fantastic. Like, and you start to realize the amount of effort you put in is given right back in
Directly
return.
correlated, yeah.
And it takes some time to really realize that. So that was a huge experience where I became much more motivated. And again, my far-fetched mentality was, I negotiated a deal with Napa, where we were gonna rebuild every Napa or every turbocharger that Napa took in. And again, I was 20 something years old, and I figured it all out. I got all these flat rate, shipping options, with FedEx, negotiated all this stuff with, so somebody in California would pay the same amount of shipping as a guy from Tennessee. We worked on a 2-day kind of turnaround thing, and it was all great, except we just didn't have the staff to do it. The numbers that they were projecting, that Napa was projecting, was astronomical, and there is no way that we could ramp up to meet their demand. So, again, I think Jesse the whole time was like, what's he doing? This is never going to work.
Sure.
We don't have the manpower to support this. But at the same point, he let me go for it. And,
Sure.
and I regret that I didn't really kind of follow through with it. We had gotten it all the way to the end, and I just needed to kind of, get it over the last hurdle. But ramping up and getting the staffing and manpower and facility and everything to do that would have just been, it might have killed us. It might have
Right.
done us in,
Right.
And I guess too, that's always been our main focus is, kind of a slow growth, not a baby step growth, but a sustainable, manageable growth. Our business, we really don't have any debt. Everything is all is paid for. So when things happen like the big recession in 07, 08, things were tough then.
Yeah.
And we were positioned ourselves, luckily enough, where our overhead was manageable at that point. So when the phone stopped ringing and the email stopped coming in, we were still okay. So we never bit off more than we could chew. And I think that was, definitely a struggle at that point, because the import drag racing and that scene was so big, and there were so many companies that were trying to get into that market that, they got over leveraged pretty easily. And when the market went south, those companies went with it. And
It is funny when times are good, everyone thinks they're good at business.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Then
Exactly.
it's the tough times that define us, and like
It's the tough
do those
times.
companies survive those those downturns, and we can't see them coming. So like we just have to try to be smart throughout the time and
totally. And and COVID was another one. I
Right.
mean, COVID was another huge. I don't know. It was good and bad for our industry.
Right.
I mean, the demand became huge, but we couldn't supply the product at the
Right.
time. And that was definitely a learning experience also. And
then everyone in 21 wants to ramp up because they think this is a whole new version of demand. And then 22, it's like, everyone got back to work.
Now we've got all this excessive inventory, right? Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, our industry is going through a lot of changes right now.
Right.
And it has recently where you get a lot of mergers, right? You get a lot of buyouts. You get a lot of consolidation. And we're seeing companies like AEM, they were huge in our industry, and they got bought out. And when you get these hedge funds or these large conglomerates that are getting into this industry, they don't realize that this is again a very passionate industry, and it's not all about the numbers. And while those hedge funds and those executives need to see the numbers, sometimes it's not always going to happen. And we realized that with a Turbonetics in the past, they kind of got bought out by a hedge fund, and certainly not a passionate one for the automotive industry. They just wanted the numbers, and that didn't bode well for them. They're in a much better place now, but they went through a trying time, and consolidation has been tough. Been tough on our industry and been tough on us as a retailer and as a manufacturer to understand a lot of these changes.
Are you finding less people interested in working on their own cars too, with like electric cars, and like what have you seen in the last 10 years?
Yeah, so our customer base is always changing. Import drag racing used to be huge. Now that's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And going back to we're large enough in our industry where we have buying power and we have presence, but yet we're small enough where we can make a shift or make a pivot pretty quickly. And that's when, our industry focus is constantly changing. So drifting or rally racing, time attack was really huge for a while.
Right.
So how do you cater to these customers, and what do they want? And figuring out platforms, what are we going to build a turbo system for next? What vehicle is going to be popular?
Yeah.
And that's constantly a struggle.
What have you found the last few years? What's the most kind of popular right now?
Yeah, so we've always had a big foot stronghold, I guess, in the Toyota market. So the 1ZZ, 2ZZ platform, with the Corollas and Celicas and MR2s is really big.
Yeah.
So we built a turbo system for the 5.7 Tundras, which was introduced, about 2 years ago or so, and that's been really popular.
Nice.
That's
I figured trucks.
Trucks are they stay pretty consistently. We went through that overlanding phase, where
Right.
a lot of people were doing truck tents and all that and needed more power just because they had so much more weight in their vehicles.
Did you find? I felt like the truck guy was definitely against turbos for a long time, right? And then
The domestic guy.
Then there's like
Chris,
a changeover.
Yeah, just domestics in general.
Yeah.
We would put Camaro or Mustang kits on our website and just crickets, really nothing, because superchargers were a stronghold.
Okay.
They were doing the blower stuff. And we are also ProCharger dealers, which is goes against kind of our Toyota mindset, but we're trying to appease these customers. We got to get into that market. Like how do we do it? So so we became ProCharger customers, and there's always been a rift between the import guys, we're
Right.
so-called import guys, sport compact versus the domestic guys.
Right.
And trucks are very much a part of that domestic culture. So breaking into that industry was challenging.
Right.
And we since have overcome that because there's so many domestics that have turbochargers from the factory now that is a much more accepted way of making power, right? So the Ford EcoBoost is a huge example. Chevy's got a lot of turbo applications, and then the small compact diesel, turbocharged diesel market is really big for us also. Yeah. So I think it took the manufacturers coming up with a factory domestic turbocharged vehicle
to kind of get the normal buyer to
and you would thought that they would know, right, because of the Grand National, right? I mean, the Grand National was an icon in the 80s, and we have so many Grand National customers that why are they not buying turbo kits for their Mustangs or their Camaros and it just was a disconnect, and it took some time for them to understand that turbocharging was a great option and a great opportunity, and we struggled in that market. We still struggle in that market. Yeah. It's just a different mentality.
Customer. So you've spent 20 plus years in the same company, same industry. What sacrifices have you had to make to stay there? Like, have you had other opportunities? People show up on your doorstep with come over here. Like, what sacrifices have you had to make to kind of stay what you're doing?
Yeah, and I've had a lot of other opportunities. I constantly get messages saying, "Hey, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you here. This industry. You're a great face for your industry, your company. Come work with us." I still want to see turbokits.com through. Like, I want to see it through. I want it to get to the next level. We've got the domain turbochargers.com also. I still want to see all of that through. Working from home is definitely an advantage. I do get flexible time. We used to travel a lot for our industry. We don't travel as much anymore, by choice. And I get to go to my kids' soccer games. And I get to, get them on the bus in the morning. And that to me as a dad is the most important thing. Yeah. So while I've probably made sacrifices in my career, I think I've, certainly personally had successes from my family perspective, right. Which is very important. So,
did you see that at the early days of Turbo Kits? Were you trying to build something, or did the wife family home kind of just happen while you're working, and now you are ability to appreciate that? Did you curate that, or was that born by accident?
It was totally my doing. My wife was from Southern New Hampshire. We were both living in Connecticut at the time. Okay. I think it was her intent to get back to Southern New Hampshire where her family was. Okay. And I said, I walked into work with Jesse one day, and I said, Jesse, look, I'm either going to work from home or we've got to go different ways, because my wife wants to be in New Hampshire. I'd rather be in New Hampshire. Everything I do for fun, is outdoors, recreation, snowmobiling, boating, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Connecticut didn't have it for me. Mm-hmm. And he said, all right, I guess you're working from home. So, and that was really the extent of the conversation. Okay. He said, we've gotten to the point where our phone is IP based, everything that we do is online at this point. And it was my own making. Nice. I had to get, it was either going to work doing that or I'd find something else.
Do you remember how old you were about when you had that call?
I was probably 21, 22 years old at that point. Yeah. And that was a pivotal time for me. Because I so wanted to be in the automotive industry and the performance industry. Yeah. And that was the only way I could do it. But I just, to keep the wife happy and myself happy, I had to make that choice. So,
interesting. Yeah. Good. Well, that's good. I mean, that's pretty young to be that clear.
Yeah. And I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I mean,
because you're 26 now, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we just, you get what feels right and feels comfortable, and maybe you're not killing it in the bank account way perspective, but you're having a lot of fun doing it, and that is, I think, as important. And I think young people really need to realize that too. That you're not going to make $100,000 coming out of college, in your first job necessarily.
Right.
And that's okay. Find
but
something
if you
that you really
also
love.
the sacrifice is probably you're not going to like it.
Right.
if you're getting the $100,000.
Right. You're not going to love your job.
No.
Yeah. Monday morning's going to come around and you're going to regret, maybe, why can't I go snowmobiling again another day,
'Cause you're working every weekend and you're
right.
doing
Exactly.
the things that,
exactly.
There's ways to balance that. And so like, does the money buy the thing that allows for the happiness, or can you find happiness without the money?
Going to the automotive industry, when I was selling cars, I was making great money. But I didn't have time to spend it, right? I mean, because you didn't get 2 days in a row off, or you didn't have weekends off. And while you can make all this money, and it was great to do that, I couldn't spend it. I didn't have the time to spend it. So, that was a learning point too.
So you've curated a pretty amazing life kind of up to this point. Does anyone ever talk with you and get to know you and say that you're lucky?
Yeah. I get that a lot, and I think, and I think it goes back to, the relationship perspective of my personality, right? I really value relationships that I have with people. And I think I've gotten to this point because I'm well respected, because I have a trust with people. And yeah, having some flexibility, living where I want to live, my kids are into a bunch of hobbies, and I can make that happen for them. That's a luxury to me.
How does it make you feel when someone calls you lucky?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's earned.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of work involved with it. I think there's putting the time in is certainly a huge part of our industry. Gaining a name for yourself, and a reputation for yourself, and that all takes time. It's not something you can do. It's not something you can just jump into. College is a tough time because I think they prepare you mentally and try to give you this mindset that once you get out of here, you shouldn't be making any less than 150 grand a year. You should be the top of the pile and be just successful right off the rip. And I think that's kind of a disservice to people in college, and young people in general, because I think that they maybe don't realize how important relationships are, and trust building, and paying your dues, and putting the time in, sweeping the floors, right? I mean, somebody's got to do that. And if you want that job, if you want to be in that industry, that's where you have to start. Right. And I think that's a reality check for people that are really starting out. And luck might have something to do with it, but it's a lot of hours. Jesse and I would be working Sundays and shipping kits and stacking kits, and making sure our product was good, and making sure that our website was up to date, and we still do it. I still when I'm putting my kids to bed, I'm still reading emails, and it just never stops.
Yeah.
And we're lucky. We're positioned at that point where the workload is sometimes overwhelming, but you have to push through, and you have to appreciate it. Right. And it is time consuming. It's a lot of work. And you got to realize that you can drown an opportunity as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting concept too.
Right. Well, there's like a weird point at which things are so many good opportunities. Yeah. I found that in my businesses as well, and now you have to choose. Absolutely. And on a side note, I do a lot of my kids are really into mountain biking. We're a mountain biking family, so cool.
I started a NEMBA chapter, New England Mountain Bike Association chapter, in my region of the state of New Hampshire. Yeah. And that's another full-time job. So trying to balance, my day job and my passion for mountain biking, and starting this chapter has been another struggle and challenge. But, because I have some flexibility, I'm able to do that. And I feel great about those opportunities, because I can give back, to our public and our kids, right. And build a trail system in our area, which families will enjoy, and that to me is that's success as well.
That's cool. That's freedom you never probably thought about when you were younger.
It's a freedom, and I think more now than ever. a freedom is like a wealth, right? You know, people talk about being successful and being wealthy and or being rich, right? And I think that freedom and flexibility is now more of a goal for young people, and finding that work-life balance is really important. So if you can get yourself positioned in an opportunity where you have, you know, can check all those boxes, that's lucky.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to call yourself, that's lucky.
Cool. So I want to get into our how we met story. So like a good couple, I'm gonna let you start. It's just an amazing, coincidence, luck, happenstance. But I'd be curious to hear your version, and then I'll give you my version.
So my version is, I was sitting in the airport and coming home from PRI, which is the performance and racing industry, and a show we often attend. It's in Indianapolis, and it's in the middle of December. It's cold out there. They don't have the same opportunities and nightlife that Vegas has when we go to SEMA. So I was ready. I was just ready to be home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, we'd been there for a week. I was looking forward to getting home. And all of a sudden I saw this guy that came into the terminal, and he was dressed just like me. Like he had the same buffalo chip, shirt on. He had the same color, like khaki, pants on, and he was wearing a Team O'Neill hat. And I'd heard of Team O'Neill. I feel like I've gotten rebuilt turbos for you in the past or something with Tim or something. Yep. So I was like, I know, he must be going back to New Hampshire. That's where I'm going. I said, hey, yeah, Team O'Neill. Like I'm familiar with you guys. And then all of a sudden Chris was like, hey, I'm Chris. I'm a partner at Team O'Neill. I own Team O'Neill. And I was like, oh, wow, how cool. Like I'm in the turbocharger industry. Like, we've got to be able to find some common ground here and work together. Mm-hmm. And that's when he explained, like, hey, look, I'm trying to build a championship car this year. I'm really, really motivated to do that. And I need some more power. Yeah. So sure enough,
So for me, I was on the floor at PRI like 2 hours before, and I'm with Ryan Thompson, the manager of my car. And we're like, my skill was probably high enough that we could win the championship. But if we could find 15 more horsepower in a limited 2-wheel drive Fiesta ST, we would probably secure the championship hands down, no problem. And then for me to go from there in that meeting, the last meeting I had, to drive to the airport, get there, then some guy says, hey, cool, Team O'Neill hat or whatever it was. And then us start talking, and like I could 15, 20 horsepower and still keep it in the stock. I was like, holy smokes, I cannot believe the answer to my problem was immediately there.
Yeah, it's sitting right next to you, man.
It was crazy. And I think even like we got on the plane and we were by chance next to each other.
Yeah, and then for the next flight we sat together too. So
like planes, trains, and automobiles style. And stuck with me.
Yep. And and our conversation, just never ended, and it felt like the flight was 15 minutes, and sure enough we were getting off, and
we have young kids that are similar ages.
So many things that were common, and it made an easy conversation, an easy friendship,
We know some of the same people, and
a lot of
Ruger,
the same people,
and it's just funny how we never actually met until that moment in time, and
Long
I sent you
brothers.
off a turbo or two, and here I am now, rally champion. So
exactly.
Correlated or not, but thank you so much for
of course
helping me achieve my lifelong
Of course,
dream.
yeah, and we were very cognizant and aware of staying within the restrictions of your class, Chris. So that was
that's a big deal, right? I didn't want to be a cheater, and I didn't want to have any of that issues, and I just wanted to have, and you guys have the technology and skill to just make it a little bit more, and I think you refresh some of the components just to make them brand new, and
absolutely, get it up to modern technology standards, and I spoke with your race director and made sure that we were all within the confines of the rules and regulations, and that's to me, that's the most fun of my job, is new challenges like that. When I got your text that you won the championship, I was like, that's awesome. Like, go Chris, that's so cool. It was one of your dreams come true. And that's a huge milestone in your life. And I'm so proud of you for doing that. Yeah. but it's not only your text. I get a text from Dennis Mott, from Mott Motorsports. Hey, we just won the world championship for snowmobile drag racing, and that was a turbo that you put together for us and shipped it out overnight. And we slammed it in the snowmobile at the day of the race, and sure enough, it did it, cool. And that's the icing on the cake for me, Or Dave Dunn, we built the fastest side-by-side in the world. It went to Arizona, and it was the fastest side-by-side in the world with our turbo.
Jeez.
How cool is that? So, or, we've got a lot of land speed record cars, that hey, we just won the land speed record, for this class. Or a customer of mine built a Gixxer 1000 when we used to build turbo systems for them, and he got the longest wheelie. Right? I mean, just random things. But
amazing.
If you're able to help these people achieve their goals and their life dreams, and we had a small part of it, that's fantastic. That is just the icing on the cake for me.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much again. It's been awesome to get to know you, and it's just amazing how easy it was, right? And like, you understood immediately what my goal was, and you guys helped me get there. And like, it's just, I'm so grateful that we got.
Yeah, we've had a lot of customers in your same situation, right? They just need a little more, and we're able to provide that,
right? Without damaging the rest of the vehicle, and like pushing any other limits,
and within the confines of the class,
and two-wheel drive cars historically are known, it's the hill climb component, and that's right where I felt the difference with you guys' stuff. It was, the rest of the daily driving part of it wasn't a huge noticeable difference.
Maybe a little less shifts?
Able to hold the
gear
wasn't
a little
paying
longer?
Attention to that the most, but what I did notice was the pull when I was going up the hills. That was just like a little crisper, a little faster, and I was cresting those peaks a little bit, like 10 miles an hour faster than I was able to before.
And 10 miles an hour is a huge difference in rally racing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that was our goal. That was my goal, was to help you get where you wanted to be,
So anything else cool that you have coming up next with the business, or anything else in your life, or anything else that you want to talk about?
So going back to, our turbochargers.com domain, I think, ultimately our shift is going to be away from turbo kits, because there's so many factory turbo vehicles that.
Interesting.
I think our main focus right now is turbokits.com. I think that will shift into turbochargers.com, and with that shift will be more focus on rebuilding and upgrading and repairing turbos. So I want to learn myself more about that process. I have a turbo balancer in my garage at home. I've got a whole stack of blown turbos, and I got to learn how to rebuild these and upgrade them and everything myself, instead of having our guys do it. And I want to teach myself that. I think that will be a great opportunity that will kind of move me into a direction where if I can get off the phones someday, and there could be another face of turbokits.com or turbochargers.com, that would be great. It's been a long run.
Sure.
I really want to focus more on that aspect of the business now. I think building that business, there's a huge opportunity there for us in the future, and I think that is a direction I'd like to go. I can see maybe my son at some point being interested in it and wanting to take it over at some point. And that could be a cool opportunity for our brand and for him.
Yeah.
So maybe my daughter, maybe it's not my son, maybe it's my daughter wants to take it over, but give them some opportunity in the future. I think that's one of the best things I could do for my kids.
Yeah.
And that's, family life is incredibly important to me, the balance of work and family life, and opportunities that I could provide for them is of my utmost importance, I think.
That's so cool.
So
how can people connect with you or follow your adventures, or is there a way that you like people to reach out to you if they're trying to get a hold of you?
Yeah, totally. So our website is turbokits.com, turbochargers.com also. So that's probably the best place. We have a large online presence through our YouTube channel and our Instagram and through Facebook. I don't personally get involved with those channels,
Okay. Yep.
and by choice.
Yep.
So our business, we're always posting new updates. We're always posting new products. We're giving people information on what's going on behind the scenes, and that's probably the best way to reach us. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, man. It's
Yeah,
been great
of
to get
course.
to know you.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris, for sure. It's been
All right.
it's been a treat.
Oh, thank you.